Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Thank you, Hussam, for the kind introduction. So I'm quite honored just to virtually stand in front of you here today and present this presentation, which is going to pretty much be a quick once-over about the timeline of the modern architecture here in Sudan, the many stages it has taken, and the various subsequent architects and designers that have contributed to it. So to not take up so much time, I'm just going to delve into the topic. The title of this presentation is going to be The Drivers of Early Modernity here in Sudan. It's going to be divided into some chapters: the colonial era, the post-colonial, and which is the independence era, and then the current situation. So as most of you know, that Sudan was a British colony, as much as most of Africa. So by an act of nature, that at that time of its colonization had shed its light on all the aspects of life, especially the architecture, because it's the face of every place. So by an act of nature, it had to accommodate it. So it had to change over, which is the title of this chapter. We can say that the colonial era is divided into two stages: the early colonial and late colonial. The early colonial era dates back to from the start of the 1900 to 1920. So there is substantial evidence that the invading British architecture profession was influenced by the modernist movement begun by the construction of the Crystal Palace in London in 1851. And Herbert Kitchener was the pioneer of this era, who was Sudan's first governor general, and he did not believe that the indigenous construction techniques of Sudan were suitable for the required civic edifices and housing facilities for the new rurals. He believed that they required facilities comparable to the standards they were accustomed to, whether in Britain or in Egypt. So despite the fact that Sudan was under a condominant rule of both Britain and Egypt, the British culture was the most dominant one, and the British had also some advantage in both town planning and architecture. So they supplied the engineers, but the majority of the constructors and workers were recruited from Egypt. So this process resulted in a revolution of the building sector in the 20th century and created a shift that was enormously substantial. But we can say that it moved on a slow pace due to the recession caused by the World War I. So we can see here some photos from the palace, the Khartoum Palace, that was designed and supervised by Kitchener. And also, as I said, that Kitchener hired a well-known town planner for that time, which was called MacLean, to create the first master plan of Khartoum's capital. And actually, the first, the deformed triangle at the top is the actual plan that MacLean designed and was supervised by Kitchener, but the other parts are a housing extension that was later created by Sudanese architects themselves. So as I said, Kitchener was the star of this era. So he actually designed and supervised several buildings, but we can say that All Saints Cathedral, which you can see as at the left of the screen, was the most notable structure built under his supervision, except for the magnificent tower, which you cannot see in the picture because Sudan's current Islamist authorities has dismantled it, and the cathedral now works as part of the palace museum. So but it still remains one of the greatest early colonial structures. And also the colonists were obligated to respect the preferences of the primarily Muslim people, in addition to the infrastructure and structures they created. So in this regard, the Khartoum Central Mosque was one of the main structures that was constructed at the first batch of colonial structures. It's located in the center of Abbas Square, which was a major site in the town's plan that Kitchener has created. And those are the two most remarkable buildings of that era. So going to the late colonial architecture, which we can say that it dates back from the start of 1921 to 1956. So by the 1950s, the colonial authorities had started training some native recruits to help them learn from foreign specialists. So this contributed to filling a skill gap in the construction area which had previously existed. So the architectural history of the later years of the condominium rule, we can say that it's represented by two buildings that have very little in common. One of them is the Omdurman Municipality Building, built in 1954, at the very late years of the colonial area, and also Khartoum's Farouk Mosque, which was built in 1951. Those buildings, though they were both built by and constructed by the bipartite condominium administration, they represent extremely distinct architectural approaches and opposing cultural ideas. So, and this might be attributable to the fact that they were designed to perform very distinct roles. So we can say here that the evident early modern British effect in Omdurman municipality, because the structure is a composite construction with exposed brick walls and from all the sides, and it contains also a large spans from the inside, which was one of the main features of that era, of the designs of that era. And also for the Khartoum King Farouk Mosque, it was entirely paid for, built and designed by Egyptian rurals, by Egyptian government, and it bears the name of the Egyptian rurals at that time, King Farouk. So despite being half the size of the prominent mosque in Abbas Square, it's also an artistically appealing structure, and we cannot deny that. We can say that also these are one of the stars building for that era. We can then talk about the after independence Sudan. You can see here a very interesting photo, which is the book cover of Everything is Possible, Our Years in Sudan. It was a book that was written by Alec Potter. We're going to go over him in the next slides of this presentation. So after Sudan had taken its independence in 1956, it was going through a period of, we can say, uncertainty, which had a severe influence on practically every element of the society. So because the political scene was in disarray, the growth plans were put on hold, and the priority of the government was to maintain the country's integrity. So this took a toll on the progress of every aspect. The benchmark here and after the independence era, we can say that it dates back to Kitchener. We can go back to Kitchener because during the refurbishment of his Governor Palace, he requested some fundings to create an educational college in memory of his predecessor, General Charles Gordon. And so Fabricius Basha was the architect for Egypt's Khedive. He was tasked with creating the main edifice, which was finished in April 1899. And another architect called Frederick Gorange, he's a self-educated architect. He was then the one entrusted the task of generating the architectural details and managing the building of Gordon Memorial College, which was inaugurated by Lord Kitchener himself in February 1902, a year before it was completed. So the benchmark that this college has created was the introduction of the first generation of Sudanese architects who arrived in 1961 after the University of Khartoum, which is the later name of this Gordon Memorial College, appointed architect Alec Potter to establish the Department of Architecture in the School of Engineering about 1956. He recruited 4 second-year students from the Faculty of Engineering to join his new department. And the Faculty of Architecture till now bears a design studio by his name. So Professor Alec did not only found the Department of Architecture, but he was also the pioneer of modern architecture here in Sudan, among other Sudanese and foreign architects. So this department that he created became a major center for architectural education in the region throughout the years, and was the center of the Islamic, the start of the Islamic architecture here in Sudan. So regarding what Alec Potter had done here in Sudan and how he documented this, we can say the sketches that are shown here, there are hand-drawn sketches that were drawn by his wife in their book, Everything is Possible, Our Years in Sudan. One of the most remarkable reviews that I've read about the book, it says that the book, in essence, is about what Sudan had taught the Potters. So the book is a very interesting piece of art that documents the journey of Ali Potter here in Sudan as a professor and as an architect. And it also documents some of the so unique sketches that was drawn by his wife, and how living in Sudan and designing for Sudanese people had affected him and his wife's lives. So Alec designed and supervised during his time in Sudan the construction of many projects, especially for the University of Khartoum. He designed the American flats and some housing constructions. But one of the most remarkable and most cherishable of his project was the construction of the exam hall here in Sudan.
But you have to, you're out of time somehow, so try to finish. Yeah.
Okay, we started a bit late, but okay, I'll try to go quickly. Okay, so one of his most interesting structures were the exam hall. Here's a quote that he mentioned in his book, and that about how the design of the examination hall was one of the big challenges that he faced during his professional life in Sudan, and how the requirements were very challenging even to his standards. So since we have no time, you can check. We can quickly go over it. But he said that it was a very challenging. It was a very challenging step in his professional life, the design of a hall that was going to serve multi-purpose tasks and not only just for the exams. And also he was talking about it being so challenging even in terms of designing for the socioeconomic fabric of Sudan and also for the climate. Hence he decided that he was going just to choose native construction materials like mud bricks and Sudanese mahogany wood, which we will see clearly in the photos of when the structure was under construction. Still, we can clearly see that the whole roof was constructed out of wood and the whole walls were constructed out of mud brick, Sudanese mud brick. Since we cannot fit all of the buildings that were designed in that era here, we can actually wrap this up and just talk about how the current scene of architecture here in Sudan. Actually, things only got worse from there. So the name of this chapter is A City in a Dilemma. So we can say that this chapter dates from 2000 and onwards. So during this time, architecture practice in Sudan appears to have declined, and so glass skyscrapers and aluminum cladding grew to dominate the building style. With the finding of oil, desires for images of Dubai also grew up. So by that point, as architect Ruin Moore describes it, shape began to follow budget. So as a last point to wrap this up and to show one of the few projects that still ties us back to the modern era and its climatic and visual considerations, and also to showcase the finest of what Sudan has erected since 2000, we can talk about the Salam Center for Cardiac Surgery, created by Studio Tam Associati, which is a Venice-based studio. The project, which was debuted in 2010, was awarded the 2013 Aga Khan Award for Architecture. So the structure exemplifies an amazing marriage of local materials and intelligent use of space, and all the spaces are made more domestic and intimate by the combination of ventilation and natural light. So as a conclusion, as I previously stated, the purpose of this presentation is not to track the evolution of architecture here in Sudan. It rather seeks to give a chosen overview of Sudanese architecture progress and how it went, and the steps that it went through since 1900 to 2000. So we can say that the trajectory created in the natural evolution of the country's architectural history must be evaluated, and the following variables created by the colonist architects, and we can say that the Eurocentric educational systems have gone and resulted in some kind of a feeling of taking a little pleasure and a little pride in indigenous culture and how it affects the built environment. So today's architectural creation in the country is marked by an act of copying and a lack of roots and attempts to mimic a regional strategy and an international, we can say internationalism rather than modernism.